Imagine waking up at 6 a.m. every morning to go lift with your team, then directly after going to all your classes for the day, then following that, hours of practice, followed by mandatory study hall, and finally at the end of your day, you have to find time to fit in sleep so you can wake up the next day and repeat the cycle again. I've personally experienced this because I'm part of the women's soccer team here, and I find myself barely having time to fit in my homework. With all this time consumed, how are athletes able to accumulate funds for food, clothing, and personal needs? It's not possible, so why aren't athletes getting paid? We are expected to treat being an athlete like a job, yet student athletes spend as much time practicing a week as someone who works a full-time job, yet we aren't even paid. So it's about time that the NCAA and colleges start treating it like a job also, and start paying student athletes for all their hard work. Today I'm going to explain to you what it's like to be a student athlete, all the time that's put in, the NCAA rules that prevent student athletes from working significant amounts, and the revenue that is earned by schools because of student athletes, and without the student athletes getting any reward. And hopefully by the end you'll understand why student athletes should be paid. Many do not understand the time and effort put in by student athletes. It's very taxing on time, and students lack time to study. More time is going into athletics than into their schoolwork. The USA Today described a study that found that, quote, some 21,000 current student athletes at 627 Division I, II, and III schools who participated in the survey, that in the top tier D1, almost 2 of every 3 said that they consider themselves more as athletes than as students. They also said that D1 football players said that they spend an average of 44.8 hours a week on their sport and only 40 hours on schoolwork. Many other sports like softball, soccer, basketball also came up with the same amount of hours during this survey. So with all of this time occupied, students find it very difficult to be getting a job. But even if they were to get a job, the NCAA has rules against them getting a job. A quote from diverseeducation.com states that full athletic scholarships pay for tuition, books, plus room and board, but not other costs. And under the new rule, referring to the NCAA rule against working, athletes' earnings may not exceed what their school calculates as incidental expenses for the academic year, which ranges from $1,200 to $2,500. The old rule was that student athletes were only allowed to work during the summer and during school-approved holidays. So if you take the expenses that a student athlete may endure, this isn't going to be enough money to cover all the expenses monthly. If you were to take the smaller amount of money that someone may earn, which is $1,200, and you divide it by 12 for each month, you get a total of $100 a month, which isn't exactly enough if you're talking about covering gas, food, and other expenses like, say, you need clothing, so you have to go buy something for a presentation. That's not going to fit into that budget. From personal experience, I'm given a budget because my parents are slowly working on cutting me off, and I definitely go through more than $100, and I eat at the CAF 3 times a day, which is we already paid for, so I use that, but I still go over the $100 budget, which they're expecting students to be able to live off of. And if you factor in the fact of students that may live out of state like I do, most people can't afford to go home, especially now with the economy. I know several of my teammates weren't able to go home for Thanksgiving, and some are staying close for Christmas break because it's just too expensive to go home. Athletes put an insane amount of time into athletics, resulting in huge revenues for their colleges, yet some don't even personally have enough money to go home. Sports Digest argued that student athletes should be paid in light of the huge revenues that they have generated for colleges and universities. Students are being exploited for their athletic achievements, making schools millions of dollars, yet they can't afford dining and individual expenses when the schools can afford new equipment for all their sports teams, and etc. So in conclusion, student athletes spend more than half of their time training and playing their games, leaving no time for them to finish their schoolwork. And many assume that scholarships will end their financial troubles, but they don't, because most often scholarships aren't full rides, and even if they are, the scholarships don't cover food and personal expenses. It just covers room and board and the cost of the education. So, I mean, like on my sports team, a lot of people, like 3 people maybe, have full rides, and that's pretty rare, especially for women's soccer. And if you take into account larger teams, because my team only has 22 players, like basketball teams, there's no way that a lot of people have full rides. So the expenses that these student athletes are enduring is even greater. And I mean, once you're getting into college, your parents are going to stop paying for you. It's just a fact of life. They're not going to keep supporting you, so you're going to have to find your way to earn a living. Regular students have that opportunity, when student athletes may not. Also, athletes are gaining revenues for the school, so why can't athletes get a cut of this action? Giving the athletes a cut of this action may help student athletes stay in school rather than go pro. So why not reward hard work and pay student athletes?